Welcome to our English lesson. Today, we will practice our listening and speaking skills and also learn about past perfect continuous tense. Our story for today is Best Friends. Listen carefully. Best Friends. James and Oliver had been best friends since childhood. But after high school, their lives took different paths. James had moved to Australia for work, while Oliver stayed in England to start his own business. Though they had kept in touch through emails and phone calls, they hadn't seen each other in over 10 years. Both of them had been eagerly waiting for the chance to meet again, and finally, after years of planning, the time had come. James had been saving money for the trip for nearly 5 years. He had been working long hours and even taking on extra projects just to make sure he could afford the flight and a 2-week stay in London. Every time he had felt exhausted, he reminded himself that it would all be worth it when he finally saw Oliver again. Meanwhile, Oliver had been preparing for the reunion in his own way. He had been renovating his house for months because he wanted to be perfect for when James arrived. Oliver had been painting the walls, fixing the garden, and even building a guest room for his friend. By the time the trip was near, Oliver's house looked brand new. On the day of the reunion, James and Oliver couldn't believe it was finally happening. They met at the airport with big smiles and hugs. It felt as if no time had passed, even though they had both been living very different lives. As they sat in Oliver's newly renovated living room, they talked about everything they had been doing over the years. James told him how he had been working on an important project for his company, which had taken up most of his time. Oliver shared how he had been expanding his business and had even been teaching himself some new skills, like cooking, which James found surprising. For the next 2 weeks, they enjoyed the time together that they had been missing for so long. They visited old places they used to go to, shared meals, and laughed about memories from the past. By the end of the trip, both of them promised that they wouldn't wait another 10 years to meet again. Before we practice our speaking skills, let's learn about past perfect continuous, the tense from the story we've just covered, to improve our English. Past perfect continuous. The past perfect continuous tense is used to talk about an action that was happening over a period of time before another action in the past. Structure. Positive. Subject plus had plus been plus the ing form of the verb. Example. I had been studying for 2 hours before the exam started. She had been working there for 5 years before she quit. Negative. Subject plus had plus not plus been plus the ing form of the verb. Example. He had not been sleeping well before his trip. We hadn't been practicing enough before the game. Question. Had plus subject plus been plus the ing form of the verb. Had you been waiting long before the bus arrived? Had they been living there for a long time before they moved? When to use. 1. Action happening before another past action. To show that something was happening over time before something else happened. Example: I had been cooking dinner when the phone rang. She had been cleaning the house before her guests arrived. 2. Cause of something in the past. To explain the reason for something that happened in the past. Example: he was tired because he had been running. They were upset because they had been arguing. Now it's time to practice. Repeat after me. James had been saving money for the trip for nearly 5 years. James had been saving money for the trip for nearly 5 years. Oliver had been renovating his house for months. Oliver had been renovating his house for months. He had been painting the walls and fixing the garden. He had been painting the walls and fixing the garden. They had both been eagerly waiting for the chance to meet again. They had both been eagerly waiting for the chance to meet again. James had been working long hours to make sure he could afford the flight. James had been working long hours to make sure he could afford the flight. Great job following our English lesson today. You did well to listen and practice so much. Keep practicing because it helps you get better. Every time you practice with our videos, you get closer to speaking English really well. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to get more of our lessons.